Um, we're good to go. Anyways, we'll just get going right into it. This is the OGA course rating training. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you guys coming in. Here's a quick notice that these are our books. There are no updates for 2026. The 2028 will be our next change year. These books have been effective as of 2024. These are not for distribution. If something happens and you need to have your book replaced, I can replace it. If your dog eats your book, I have to replace it. You can't call USGA and get a copy of this book. That also goes for the manual or the guide, the printed version or the fancy schmancy wired version that we have in the book or that we use on the course. Either way, if you need a copy of the book, I can provide it, or you can look at the one online. Big reminder that we're still using the same course rating guides through 2028 or until 2028. Let me know if you need yours replaced. Newbies will receive the book as we go on your first rating, or if you stop by the office. Let's see, I think somebody's trying to come in here. Why do I keep clicking on the wrong things? There we go. So as we go, if you need something replaced, please let me know as soon as possible. If I need to order them, usually it takes a couple weeks. And a reminder that the manual is available on the ProBoard site if you need it. This session is recorded and will be posted to the ProBoard site probably by tomorrow afternoon. Sometimes it takes a little process to update the session and get it recorded. First thing I want to say is thank you. I keep thinking the schedule is going to get easier, and it doesn't. It seems like the easier I think it's going to be, the harder it actually is. This year, I tried to even contact courses that are close to each other for trips and say, hey guys, can you guys figure out what you need? And I will get in and listen to you, but or I will come and talk to you, but you know, you guys agree on a couple of dates and then call me, and they still don't talk to each other. John, quick question was, where's the office? The office is in Woodburn next to OGA Golf Course. So if you happen to be local, pop in or let me know that you're going to be there, because I work from home a couple of days a week. Anyway, I want to thank you for that, for being patient. Getting the schedule out has been a nightmare. And even the stuff I loaded on the schedule on the volunteer board on the Galaxy Digital volunteer site, something was wrong with them. And in order for me to get it right, I have to delete it all and start from scratch. So there's that. I'm excited. So anyways, extra thank yous. I hope to have a PDF of our schedule up and available on that ProBoard site by later today. Or not later today, sorry, by Friday. I just have a couple things to confirm. I had a couple courses that have switched already that have confirmed earlier. My job is fun. It's also not fun when you're trying to contact a golf course and we are four, not one or two, but 4 GMs behind what we had in our system. Nobody tells us anything. Okay, somebody else trying to get in. Hang on a second. There we go. Okay. Trying to keep up with the pings. Anyway, so today what you want to expect. This is the outline for basically the whole session. Today, the 18th and the 25th, 3 Wednesdays in a row from 3 to 5, we will meet online. It is the same exact link that you clicked today. The same one is available either in the email or the meeting link that I sent, or on the ProBoard site. Same link, doesn't change. Figured I'd keep something simple.
Hey,
we're going to keep.
Gretchen, this is Tim. I did from the meeting invite, and I was sitting out there for 10 minutes, and then I realized there must be something wrong. And so I went back to the email and was able to come in. But
that's weird. Yeah, I can't answer that one. I use the same I don't know. But thank you for letting me know, Tim.
Yeah.
Just use the ProBoard link then.
No, that's
Skip
why
the
I
email.
finally, I knew you wouldn't be 5 minutes late, so I went and found the other one, so.
Oh, good. Thanks for letting me know, Tim. Appreciate that. Anyways, so use the ProBoard link. That will be the same one for always. Thanks for letting me know. Again, so we're going to go through starting with all the definitions and basic info. A lot of the people who've been reading for a while will already know most of this. I'm going to describe what a Form 1 is and how we write or use the information on the form. We're going to talk about what we do and how we measure. I'm going to talk about how to read the schedule, which will be available Friday, even if there's going to be a bunch of TBAs on it. We will then go through each one of the obstacles in order, discuss the major points, describe the things that are different and have all the adjustments, and I'll use examples where appropriate and possible. And please, if you can, save your answers until the end of the section. I'll have a little question thing that pop up, or if you hear me say, hey, do you have a question? Because sometimes even though you have your hand up or chat message, I'm also looking at 3 screens right now, so I don't want to miss anybody. So if you can hold until we get to that answer question section, it will help. We'll go as far as we can in 2 hours each day. I'm going to stop the teaching part and go into our homework that we did before the end of today, which I know most of you haven't even learned about, but that's okay. I was really just using it to try and get ahead and start learning. Get our cobwebs out, as was noted by somebody. So we're going to get as far as we can in 2 hours of each day, and then I'll tell you where we're stopping. If you have any questions after we shut down, send me an email. Don't wait. I will include that question in the next presentation. So I'll start each day off with the questions that have been generated as we go, and then when we finish, I'll link the video again to the ProBoard site, and right in that initial message, I'll put the link right in it. So we'll start right off. The basics of course rating. The course rating system is designed to ensure that the rating of a course is in proper relation to the ratings of all other courses. If this is not achieved, players at courses rated too low will be over-handicapped and vice versa. I always love it when people at golf courses, they see us out there and they say, hey, raise our handicap, raise our rating. I want my handicap to go up. Little do they know, it's the complete opposite. Accuracy and consistency are the keys to effective course rating. It all starts with the measured length of the golf course from tee to green on all sets of tees. Then the effective playing length corrections, the EPLs, get added. Then the obstacle assessment and adjustments get added in. And then it's just to remind you, through the collection of extensive empirical data, this is obviously a USGA answer, but through a collection of extensive empirical data from players and golf holes, the factors that affect the difficulty of a golf hole have been evaluated and assigned numerical values that yield an accurate course rating and slope rating. I'll talk about that every once in a while, but this is millions and millions of rounds of information. When the World Handicap System came together, they kind of all agreed that the USGA system of course rating is the thing. That is the thing that everybody needed to use. And although it's been adjusted or little things added and subtracted because of, changing the meters for the rest of the world versus our yards and little things like that, our system is what is being used. I'll start with some key definitions. Course rating. That course rating is based on the expected performance of the scratch player. Starts with measured length, EPL corrections, and the effect of each of the 10 obstacle factors is considered. It is expressed with 1 decimal, example 71.4, 68.5, 75.6. Holy heck, I don't want to play that golf course. Bogey rating is something that you don't see very often. That's based on the expected performance of the bogey player due to length, EPL corrections, and the effect of the obstacle factors. One of the few places where you can see that is on the National Course Rating Database. I'm saying that very slow on purpose because it is the ncrdb.usga.org, National Course Rating Database. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. The slope rating is the relative difficulty of a golf course for players who are not scratch players compared to the players who are scratch players. And a little bit more about the World Handicap System influence. You'll see some international spellings. For example, center, C-E-N-T-R-E versus C-E-N-T-E-R, both English. One is international, one is not. It's not a misspelling, it is correct and the more internationally accepted spelling. So here's a good example of the NCRDB, National Course Rating Database. By the way, if you just go to the USGA website and go to playing, it's one of the options under playing. This is Salem Golf Club. Each set of tees is rated. You can see the gender per tee. So each set of tees that's rated, oops, all right, trying to get my little laser pointer going. So each set of tees that is rated is listed. The gender, male or female, the par, the course rating, bogey rating, and like I said, that's one of the few places where you can actually see that number. Slope rating, the front 9 and the back 9. And where par never used to be a factor, this is where it becomes a factor at this point. I just randomly put in 15.0 for the course handicap calculator. And it looks really weird that this guy on the red tees is a 9, but the guy on the white and red combo is an 8. How does that go down? Well, the thing is, your course handicap is what should get you down to par, not what should get to your course rating. So for the guy playing to 69, it takes him 3 strokes more to get to 69 than it would to get to 72. More than likely in the future, we're going to change the par, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. That would permanently reduce that 9 to a 6. Just changing par. And that's what a lot of people don't consider when they're like, I want par to be higher or lower or different. Par is important, but it's set by us, not the golf course. Every golf course that is rated is listed in this NCRDB, even the foreign courses. Here's my big example, St. Andrews. Did you know that there were this many courses at St. Andrews? The key to this is you have to know how to search if you're searching for a foreign course. Typically, you're just going to look under other because most people would think to look under Scotland. Well, Scotland isn't listed. Great Britain is listed because Scotland is part of Great Britain. If you didn't know that, you'd search in Scotland and not find any golf courses. So if you just put in the name, and then the name has to be specifically spelled. If you wrote Saint, S-A-I-N-T, it's not going to show it because it's S-T period Andrews. Now, capitalization doesn't matter, but the spelling has to be perfect. Is it River's Edge, as in R-I-V-E-R-S, or is it River's apostrophe S? If you use the wrong one, you're not going to find what you're looking for. Once I click on St. Andrews, the original course, that's what the ratings look like. And I want to remember that. If I ever go to golf there, I have to know what I'm playing to. That's going to be a fun course to play, and I will enjoy every minute of the 8,000 strokes I'm going to hit while playing there. Sorry, my mouse is being a little rambunctious right now. What is happening? That's so weird. It's not letting me change. There we go. Yep. Here we go. So here's a quick visualization of slope. For red tees, 68.6 is what the scratch player would be shooting to. 96.1 is what the bogey player would be shooting to. That term slope rating is based on the rise over run of that, the angle of that slope. All right, I'm turning this thing off. It's driving me nuts. I think my mouse is dying on me here. Come on. Let me turn the laser pointer off. Maybe just the pointer will work. The further you go back, gold tee, 71.2, 122, 99.9, as you notice, it goes up a little bit. Goes up a little bit for scratch. It goes up more for bogey. Go back one more set of tees, it's the same thing. Goes up a little bit for scratch. It goes up more for bogey. Pretty much shows you that the further you go back, the more difficult it gets for bogey. On a course like Tethro or something, it's going to kind of go off the charts. It's going to be a really steep line versus some courses where it goes back kind of evenly. Further you go back, the more difficult it is for the bogey golfer. Few key definitions. Scratch player, a player with a 0.0 handicap index. For rating purposes, they can hit tee shots an average of, and you'll see this number all the time. I have a number and then a number in brackets. 250 is the male number, 210 for the female scratch number. So scratch can hit it 250 or 210 yards and can reach a 470 or 400 yard for women hole in 2 shots at sea level. For a bogey player, that's a player with a handicap index of approximately 20 for men and 24 for women. Note that's not 18, 20 or 24. That allows for longer par threes, longer par fours, longer par fives, where it takes an extra shot for the bogey to get there often. There's a quick shot length table that shows everything. That 250-yard drive for male scratch golfer, all of these shots anticipate approximately a 20-yard roll. So it's 230 in the air, 230 in the air, 20 yards for roll, and about 250 for the total. For women, 190 in the air, about 20 yards roll, about 210 for total. If that starts getting to a point where the shot length is different because of roll or some other feature, we can change that information. We just have to make the adjustments to go with it. Par, I'm going to talk about par a little bit extra this year because we really need to push this. Par reflects the score the scratch player is expected to score on a given hole and may be allocated depending on the playing difficulty of the hole, including any effective playing length correction factors. And note the new guidelines for par in the World Handicap System allows for ranges. Up to 260 can be a par 3, 240, par 4 can begin at 240. For women, up to 420 can be a par 4, but a par 5 can begin at 370. Par reflects the score, again, that the scratch player is expected to score in a given hole and may be allocated depending on the difficulty of the hole, including effective length correction factors. For example, elevation changes, forced layups, and prevalent wind. Where a hole length falls within par ranges, for example, 470 for men or 400 yards for women, a par may be allocated as a 4 or 5 depending on the difficulty of the hole and how it's designed. I'm like, I could go on and on about this forever, where par can be, it used to be cut and dried what par is and what it was, and sometimes it gets some fun and frustrating conversations going. Where a hole length falls within 2 par ranges, it may be appropriate depending on the way the course is designed. Where the hole length falls within 2 par ranges, it may be appropriate to designate par relative to the way the hole was designed to be played. For example, if the hole lengths from all sets of tees on a specific hole lie within the recommended par 4, but that forward tee is 230 yards, which would be a par 3 length, we can designate this hole as a par 4, even if the scratch can reach the green. Guidelines for par are now included in the rules of handicapping. For anybody who's really interested, it's in Appendix F, establishing par. The yardages may not be applied arbitrarily. Your course cannot decide what they want the par to be. That comes down to your association, which would be me. That's me. I get to make that decision. Per USGA, per World Handicap System, it's not because we want it that way. There has to be a reason to change par outside of those ranges. So again, pre-2020 for men, a par 3 was up to 250 yards. At 251, it was a par 4. Now I've got that little buffer zone that I can go either way depending on the definition of the hole without doing a lot of changes or other issues. For women, 400 was a par 4, 401 was a par 5. And that is something, again, that I can change in the system, but the course cannot change on their own. That changing of par, it's called standardization of par. And it's going to be standardized for a specific gender. I can have holes that are par 5 for men and par 4 for women, or sorry, usually the opposite, par 4 for men and par 5 for women, and that's okay. But making that when you standardize par for a specific gender, it eliminates the need for the additional adjustment within a gender of players competing from different sets of tees with differing pars. If we go back to the example of Salem, if I had the gentleman playing with a 9 handicap on the red tees to par 69, I believe it was, playing against somebody from the white tees, he'd have to give back those 3 strokes anyways. He'd have to play as a 6 in that tournament. So the question is whether they should always be playing to a 6 and always have it a 72, or whether they should only play from the reds, or, you know, if they're going to be combined, we have to compensate for the difference in par. Standardization of par almost always matches a scorecard or T-sign values, where the par is routinely displayed as 1 par per gender, per course, per hole. Again, often you have a different par for men and for women. And that will minimize any mistakes for when applying net double bogey or net par where conflicts might otherwise exist. This procedure is more commonly supported by a golf club or a golf course staff who wish to have par denoted as the hole was designed to be played versus just by the yardage. And research indicates that using standardized par will have minimal impact on the handicap index. In addition, this will not have a meaningful impact on equity, as par is subtracted out during the course handicap calculation and any strokes exchanged would still be the same. So if it's the same par, you don't have to make the adjustment. So examples of when to use the standardized par is the hole lengths from all sets of tees on a specific hole lie within the recommended par 4 range for men, except for the forward tee at 235 yards. That is within the par 3 range. It's a 2-shot hole for most players, especially those who are more likely to play from the forward tee. Each set of tees on this hole should be adjudicated as a par 4 due to the way that the hole was designed to be played. If rate as a par 4 has been indicated on your Form 1 for those forward holes, please rate it as a par 4. I'll show you what that means in just a second. A double dogleg hole, for example, that has 3 sets of tees for men at 497, 458, and 409, the hole lengths fall in both par 4 and par 5 ranges. But that that hole is designed to be a 3-shot hole. So that should be listed as a par 5, even though some of the holes are within that, could be a different par range. Excuse me. The hole lengths from all sets of tees on a specific hole lie within the recommended par 5 range for women, for example, except for a forward tee with a length of 355. Again, since most of the women who play the forward tees can play it as a 3-shot hole, we still should call that a par 5, even if they're just on the bubble of par 4, par 5. When not to use standardized par, that is what happens when the hole length from the back tee for women is 520, which is well within the par 5 range based on the guidelines of the rules of handicapping. But the rest of the tees forward are within the 4-shot hole. It was designed to be played as a 3-shot hole, and all other tees on the hole are considerably shorter and were designed to be played as a 2-shot hole. In this case, we do the recommended adjudicate the back tee as a par 5 and all others as a par 4. If I have it so far different that it's a different par on the back tees, I'm okay to bring it up in par. It doesn't have to be within or outside that range. Again, or another situation, if the forward tee on a hole was designed to be played to a different green. So say an example, this isn't a specific hole in Oregon. This alternate green has a yardage of 140 yards for men, well within the par 3 yardage guidelines. That hole is meant to be played as a 1-shot hole. We can call that a par 3, even though the other green is potentially, definitely a par 4, even a par 5, but plays to a different green. Maybe they have set this alternate green because the other hole has so much carry that most of the players can't hit there. It's okay to have an alternate green situation. If there's a tee that's placed in the fairway for juniors, which is significantly shorter than the other sets of tees on the hole, the way that the hole is designed to be played is not considered in the placement of the junior tees. I just measured the holes at OGA. Most of the par 4s are in the high end of the par 3 range. They're 200, 210, 190. Those are all within the par 3 range. They're going to be considered par 4s, but they also want to call the par 5s to the one hole that's the 300 yards. That's way outside of the par 5 designation. It's okay for me to have a separate designation for junior tees in this situation. What we would do is also keep that on a separate scorecard. They wouldn't use the same scorecard as everybody else because par is going to be drastically different than everybody else. Big reminder of par is we will rate the golf course, even though it can be rated as a par 4, par 5. For course rating, we're still going to rate the course according to shot lengths and the definitions of the course rating system. WHS, World Handicap System, has added a term called handicap par. She does in air rabbits here. It's one of my least favorite terms, but it's necessary. It relates only to how the scores are posted to GHIN. Occasionally, scorecards in GHIN may have a different par from what is on our Form 1 sheets. We often have par 5 holes that we're rating coming in on a second shot instead of a third shot for scratch. Don't worry about par when we're doing course rating, except for par specific, as in par 3 holes. That's a different story. So this allows us to use more effective par in situations such as forward tees. I won't go into this. I'm just going to keep belaboring it. But big reminder, if you see those words, rate as a par 4, please rate it as a par 4, not a par 3, even if the scratch can hit. Quick notes about par. This is actually a clip from the course rating system. CR par, course rating par. This is real par by definition according to the shot lengths of the hole. This is handicap par. It is what shows up in GHIN. If I have a hole, I'll use a quick for example, number 2 at Orchard Hills. It's 230 from the back tees. It's maybe 170 from the forward tees. I don't know exactly. It's par 3 yardage. There's no doubt about it. That one hole, because of its nature, it goes straight out, straight up about 30 feet, and then does a 90-degree turn to the green. It's a par 4 hole. In that situation, the course rating par would change and the handicap par would change with it. For tees that are outside of the course rating par, I have to manually adjust the handicap par. So if we go back to the Salem example again, even though we rated the hole for course rating as a par 4, the handicap par might indicate a par 5. Again, we're not going to worry about that on course rating. That's on me, that's in the computer. When a par 3 is not a par 3. Example, when you see the words rated as a par 4, I should not have a green target higher than 2 or 3. The green target, if I tell you to rate it as a par 4, should be like a 2 or 3, not a 5, not a 6, not anything above a 3, ever, unless there's a reason to lay up. Please make sure that that is adjusted to a 2. Be sure to calculate all the things in that fairway landing zone, even though you're not going to lay up the player. So that scratch golfer has to be off the green. They need topography. They need a fairway width. They need R&R. They need bunkers. They need lateral. There's no need to give a layup adjustment. There's no need to adjust the yardage of the hole. We just need to get the scratch off the green to call it a par 4. For men, scratch is a 2 green target for up to 60 yards. For women, it's a scratch is a 2 green target for up to 20 yards and a 2 or a 3 for up to 49 yards. Again, just getting them off the green is important. Back to definitions. Par took a while. I'm going to stop yapping now about that one. Back to definitions. A shoot. A shoot occurs when the trees are positioned such that they can intervene on the flight of the path of the tee shot. You only use the shoot chart off of the tee when you're talking about trees. Hang on a second. I had somebody waiting. Again, I'm trying to keep everybody, let people in. I need 3 computers now, not just 2, apparently. If you have trees that interfere along the fairway landing zones, that could change per landing zone as you go. But shoot is only allowed off of the tee shot. It's based on the width of the opening between branches intervening or branches straight across from each other or close to straight across from each other, and the distance from the teeing area. Closely bordering is when an obstacle or condition is within 10 yards in any direction of the outside perimeter of a landing zone or the edge of a green. For example, greenside bunkers. In order to be considered a greenside bunker, they have to be within 10 yards of the green. Come on. There we go. Near. Near is an obstacle or condition within 20 yards in any direction of the outside perimeter of a landing zone or edge of the green. Fairway bunkers. For a fairway bunker to count for any player, I have a 20-yard landing zone. I have 20 yards before the landing zone and a 20 yards after the landing zone. So near can be up to 60 yards from the absolute center. Landing zone. Speaking of landing zone, you're going to see me write LZ a lot just because it's a lot easier to write than spelling out landing zone all the time. That's a fairway wide area extending from where the shot hits the ground to where it comes to rest. Typically rectangular and adjusted for roll. We might have some different shapes depending on how a fairway is cut. Line of play from the rules of golf. It's a direction that a player wishes his ball to take after a stroke, plus a reasonable distance on either side of the intended direction, normally down the center of the fairway. When a player is able to cut across a dogleg, the line of play may shift away from the center towards the inside of the dogleg. You always want to remember, if my line of play shifts, I have to have a little range to go along with it. It's not just a line, it's an area. More definitions. Penalty areas. Any body of water on a course, whether or not it's marked by the committee, including a sea, lake, pond, river, ditch, surface drainage ditch, or other open water course, even if not containing water, and any other part of the course that the committee defines as a penalty area. I want to say that real quick. Previous to World Handicap System and the big rules change back in 2019, if anybody's ever played Great Blue at Heron Lakes, all of their mounds had tall grass, and they wanted to list it as a lateral penalty area, so you'd get lateral relief. We couldn't do that for course rating because there's no water on the top of a mound. Now, since they want to define those as penalty areas, we can rate it as a lateral, and they can use the proper or the proper rule that allows them to get lateral relief. Extreme rough is cool season grass in excess of 6 for men, 5 inches for women. Underbrush and trees, other conditions such as sand dunes, not bunkers, tree roots, rocks, lava, heather, gorse, etc., which make it likely a ball will be lost or advanced only with great difficulty. It's to be rated under crossing obstacles or lateral obstacles, and there may be additional issues under R&R or bunkers. Crossing obstacle consists of penalty areas, extreme rough and out of bounds when they must be carried to play the hole. Anything I have to go over can be a crossing obstacle. Can, not is. Excuse me. Lateral obstacle consists of penalty areas, extreme rough and out of bounds when they come into play laterally on the hole. Lateral doesn't have anything to do with the color of the stakes. It just means it's either going to be that way or that way. Is it to your left or your right? Obstacle squeeze happens when lateral obstacles are present on both sides of a landing zone and the player cannot play away from either side. You want to adjust the chart value +1 if the obstacles are less than 40 yards apart, +2 if the obstacles are less than 30 yards apart. In this case, we used to have to measure from the center of the fairway out. Now we measure from edge to edge of the one side of the lateral to the other edge of the other side of the lateral. That makes more sense because measurements, well, sometimes measurements are weird. Anyways, and it can be 2 different types of lateral obstacle. For instance, I can have a water, a pond, a river on one side, or I can have out of bounds or extreme rough on the other side. It doesn't have to be the same thing on both. Oh, keep hitting the wrong buttons today. Definitions keep coming. Significant. Significant is sufficiently important to be worthy of attention and impacts the difficulty in playing the hole. That's, a lot. Versus punitive, which is the next step up. It's an obstacle or situation that is unusually difficult, often requiring a demanding recovery shot or likely to cost the player a stroke. So you've got difficult or significant and then punitive. Toggle, it's alternate rating values or application of adjustment where there are multiple instances that could be rated 1 point higher or lower, or the adjustment is marginal. We use that a fair bit with something that's right on the edge. Is it a mound? Is it not a mound? Let's not count the mound this time, but count it the next time. Sometimes we call it keeping one in our pocket or hanging on to the other half. Just make sure if you give it every time, you could overrate. If you don't give it every time, you could underrate. But if you take it on and off, you'll be fine. A tweener is a value that falls between 2 table values. If a table shows 4 in one column and 6 in the next, we may choose to use a 5 in order to not over or underrate. Tier. A tier is a plateau. For a green to be tiered, It must have 2 distinct plateaus separated by a 2-foot or greater elevation difference. The elevation difference must include a significant portion of the green. It doesn't have to be 50%. It could be 35%, but a 4-foot change. That's not going to happen very often, but you never know. But significant just means what it says, significant. Just a note, course rating is more important than ever before. With the World Handicap System taking over, there's now one significant addition: stroke index allocation. The ranking of the holes, it's the handicapping of the holes linked 1 through 18 on your scorecard. We see and print and post the course rating and slope rating that goes out to everybody. But each one of those factors can be attributed and separated out hole by hole. That's in the program. If anybody wants to know what their SIA is, I send it out on every rating, and I call it recommended stroke allocation for the course. Now the hole by hole information from course rating can be used by the course to assign SIA. The course does have the choice whether to use scores or the course rating information. This is a quick look at what the report looks like. Each hole is broken down by difficulty value. The club gets to decide again, because each set of tees has a different SIA depending on their difficulty. This is a quick look at the form, and I kind of broke it down so you could see it very quickly. But the only way to get this information into GIN is to tell us, to tell OGA. I put it in the course rating program. The course rating program gets it to GIN. That's the only way to get that to GIN. So the description of each of these columns is as below. That difficulty value, there's a mathematical formula that you can see in Appendix E of the rules of handicapping. It lies out how difficult the hole is between scratch and bogey, and then there's another formula that's attached to it. The ranking, this is the straight raw ranking. 2.51 is the highest ranking. That is assigned the number 1 handicap, or the number 1 ranked hole. Reminder, this, whether you call it stroke allocation, handicapping the holes, no matter what you call it, it's not about what is the hardest hole. It's about where the higher handicapped golfer needs the stroke the most. When you split it into odds and evens, now you have typically, unless your course is very markedly more difficult on the back, you're going to have odds on the front. You're going to have odds on the front, and then you're going to have evens on the back. So that's the odds evens distribution. And if it's a 9-hole course, you can do either 1 through 9 or duplicate it 1 through 9, or, you know, front and back with the odds and evens. This stroke index column then takes the odds and evens and assigns triads. So this number 1 handicap hole should be, why is my mouse going crazy today? This number 1 handicap hole should be somewhere in the middle 3. The number 2 handicap hole should be somewhere in the middle 3 on the back. Even though that's considered the most difficult, it ends up being higher. I'm going to go back one sheet, and what you see in the stroke index with the override is what the course actually decided to write. So either they used scores and did their own allocation, or they used course rating information and adjusted a few holes differently. This override, in order to get those numbers into GIN, these numbers right here, the only way to get that into GIN is to give it to Gretchen. Gretchen puts it in the course rating program. Some of the equipment that we use for course rating. So the course rating system guide is the actual book that we take. This is this book. It's the one that is sturdy and built for standing up in the rain a little bit, because we get to go out and play in the rain sometimes. Wrong way. Course rating system manual, it's all of the information in the guide plus some further examples. That is always available on the ProBoard site. If you have a tablet and want to download it onto that, you're fine. If you have a computer, you can download it. I wouldn't recommend printing it because it's like 140 pages. We have printed versions. I always have them in my Office box. Lasers. OGA provides lasers, but feel free to use your own. Form 1s, that's the paperwork that we use to enter all of the details. Talk about that in a minute too. GPS, if you happen to have a watch or an app that shows you the GPS, so it helps you find, especially landing zones on very long holes that are beyond 200, beyond 250 yards, those are very helpful. Golf ball, have a golf ball with you. I always have some in my Office box. They tend to disappear, however. I need to start getting worse golf balls or something because they go out and get used and then I've lost them. Pencils, if you like a good old-fashioned number 2, we're good. I also provide mechanical pencils. If you want to use your own, use your own. But use a pencil for the paperwork. Trust me, we all make mistakes. The Office box, that is my wheelie bin. I also have sticky notes, batteries, highlighters, clips, all sorts of things that come with us on every course rating. And the stimp meter, we'll talk about that in a while. And that is the thing that actually tells you where speed comes from. One of those will be provided for either 9 of an 18-hole course, and I expect the team leaders to use it at least once on every 9, just to make sure you're caught up. Because I know I've looked at things different than other people, and I use it all the time as well. Here's your Form 1. Here's a good example. Some of the things you see on a Form 1, you'll see the course name. You'll see the tees that we are rating that day. You'll see whether you are rating for men or for women. That information is real handy because if you're rating for men or for women, you'll have the shot lengths down here that are appropriate for the person you're rating for that day. You also see yardage. The yardage comes in totals. And after the totals, you'll see, oh, got another one coming in here, sorry. Hang on a second. Yardage. Hey, Fred, could you do me a favor and mute yourself? And thank you. If you have any questions, you can unmute in a little bit. The yardage, you'll see this is the yardage of the hole, and this is calculated out using the proper shot lengths and then the green target rating. The white boxes are for scratch. The gray boxes are for bogey. Quick reminder, as you're going down the fairway, you'll see all these different lengths. If you always stop at the first landing zone, start at the top, every landing zone, same thing. You look at topography, you check out the fairway rating. So look at your stance and lie information. We'll catch up with the green target. You're going to check in that landing zone if there are any R&R issues, recoverability and rough. Is there a fairway bunker? Is there something to adjust? Do you have a crossing off the tee or off of secondary landing zones? Is there lateral? It should be measured. Again, I don't care whether you listed it right or left, unless there's one on both sides. If it makes you feel better, go ahead and list it on the right side. And you'll take that assessment of the trees at the tee and then move forward if you have any adjustments. So there's a very quick, very brief overlook at what we do. Every landing zone, start at the top, go down to the bottom at each landing zone. You'll get to your next landing zone, same thing. Start at the top, work your way down. That way you'll never miss anything. But there's a basic look for it. Quick thing, obstacles do not exist. If this red box, we only count everything within 50 yards of the center of the tee or the center of the green, back in a very oblong circle here. If I have something that's beyond 50 yards, this little creek, river, waterway here does not count. It does not exist. This OB back here probably does exist. It's going to depend on your shot length and what's going on back there. This bunker, while it exists somewhere in the fairway, is there a landing zone near it? There's a new thing that just started the last couple of years ago. That's the thing that started in 2024. If an insignificant obstacle within 50 yards that is extremely unlikely to come into play, it may be rated as 0. A creek that's 10 yards off of your tee box that's only a few yards wide. The tree that's 50 yards out, but way back here when there are no other trees on the rest of the hole. Things like that that are definitely not going to play a part in the course rating. We can now apply a 0 versus those things would have had to at least have a 1. Effective playing length corrections. We're going to look at something. It is already almost 4. Gosh, I've been yapping on forever, haven't I? I'm going to go ahead and skip past this a little bit and go to the homework, if that's okay with everybody. I'll come back and start at EPLs next week. So quick look at the homework. Note, I didn't give you the yardage. I wanted you to calculate the yardage. This is the information for the hole. You have a bogey landing zone 1, scratch landing zone 1, bogey's landing zone number 2, scratch landing zone number 2, and then the bogey landing zone number 3. And the information's all here. Elevations plus 6 feet from tee to green. It's not a big thing. There's not a lot of issues there. You don't even need to write that down, to be honest. I don't care. You don't have to write down elevation unless it is a par 3 hole. And the only other time you need elevation is for your approach shot. So from tee to green on a par 4, par 5, don't write anything down. It's already in the system. Topography is listed as very flat, minor stance and lie issue for the entire fairway. Fairway width is listed, bogey, bogey, scratch, scratch. I'm going to pull up the form just a little bit, just so you can see what's going on. First of all, the information here. There's no roll, dog leg, or forced layup. You don't have to write anything here, but a scratch, a squiggle, something just kind of helps me to see it. Just like if you go down and there's nothing for crossing, for example, if there's nothing at all written there, I don't know whether you didn't look at it or there wasn't anything. So writing a scratch actually helps. Topography. Oh, we're going to 5, not 4. I'm sorry. After this, I'll go back to EPLs. I'm losing my mind today. So topography, it was minor going across. We've gotten out of the habit of thinking of them as minor, moderate, everything. We just think of it as numbers, and it's easy for topography. It's the only chart that I have memorized. I think everybody else pretty much has once you figure it out. Minors are 1s. This is the flat as a pancake topography hole. Looking at the fairway widths, these are subtracted from here. So 570 minus 250 is 320. 320 minus 220 is 100. Now that 100, he can reach the green. That is the approach shot for the scratch. 570 minus 200 for the bogey is 370. 370 minus 170, which is the bogey's second shot, is 200. 200 minus 170. 200 minus 170 is 30 yards. 30 yards, again, is the approach shot. I found out there's a little glitch in the guide that shows us the wrong information at 30. Plus or minus 30 is a 2, and then 30 to 54 is a 3. So that's where I got confirmation from USGA that of what to use. That is listed in the Pro Board site. I added that to information. I've listed the fairway landing zones here, 26 and 28 for scratch, 40, 44, and 26 for bogey. Just a little quick time saver note. For fairway rating, you only need to look at the thing that's going to bring you the higher number. So for scratch, 26 is less than 28. I really only need to look at this 5. For the practice, I noticed, hey, that one's a 5 as well, but this one doesn't have any extra added things. For bogey, I don't have to look at the 30 and 44. I shouldn't even have to look at it. I did, I wrote it in the thing, but I think about all the time that you're saving if you only look at this one and that one and skip all the ones that aren't going to count. This one is also a 5. Those total numbers go here. 5 for scratch from here, 5 for bogey from here. One sec. The green targets. Now, normally for you guys who are new, this is normally all printed out for you. So it was a good practice every once in a while for everybody to know how to get those numbers where they come from. The green size I was given to you as 24 by 26. Always, always, always list width by depth, please. That is the way it goes into the system. That is the way I hope it's written down on the paperwork. Real quick math, 24 plus 26 is 50. 50 divided by 25 is, or 50 divided by 2 is 25. That comes out of column 4. We'll talk about where that column information comes from when we talk about green target. The green target information is the most important thing because green target, R&R, and bunkers are all related. You get the R&R and bunker rating from the green target rating. Scooch that up just a little bit. Because the rough was at 2.5 inches, just straight off the chart, a 3 was a 3 and a 2 was a 3. This is where it separates down again. For green target, you're coming in scratch from the right, scratch from the left, and bogey from the right. You have to pick the right person to come in from. Versus topography and fairway, it didn't matter whether it was scratch or bogey, it just mattered what the distance of the hole was or what that landing zone was. For bunkers, if we were walking this hole, we would have noticed that that bunker is too far to be considered a fairway bunker for the bogey. That bunker is right in the scratch landing zone, so scratch gets a yes, bogey gets a no. This bogey is right next to that bunker, so he gets a yes at this landing zone. And this bogey up here, that bunker that's next to the green also qualifies as a fairway bunker. It's near his landing zone that's right in front of the green. If I have a yes in one landing zone and a yes in another landing zone, I know that that's an adjustment. That is called a 2 adjustment because it happens 2 times. So what would have been a 2 right off of the chart becomes a 3 with a 2 adjustment. Now it's not a +2, it's a 2 adjustment. Fairway bunkers happen 2 or more times. It's only a 1 point adjustment, but it's called a 2 because it happens 2 or more times. And there's no depth additive because you need to get to 3 feet at the green side bunker in order to get the depth adjustment. That 4-foot deep bunker that I told you was here doesn't matter. That's not a green side bunker. If it was classified as a pot bunker or something extreme, then you would have had something additional to add there. Laterals. This is where it gets fun. Anything from crossing laterals and down, or crossing laterals very specifically, it's the length of the shot and then how far it is to the issue. Crossing, it's the length of how far it is to get over. Lateral, it's the length of the shot and how far to the difficulty. So the scratch, we had 2 landing zones off the drive at 16 and off the second shot at 18. But you have to remember the drive full tee shot was a 6 off of the charts. The second shot at 18, I'm only hitting a 220. Like I'm playing the men's. My male golfer, Bogey, is hitting 200 or 220 off the greens, which is one row up in that column. And that would have given him a 5. Anytime, just like the yeses for bunkers, if I have two numbers over a 5 or higher for a single golfer, so that's two scratch shots on one hole, there's going to be a further adjustment. So if I have a 6 on the first one and a 5 on the second one, that adds up to 11. That is a 2 adjustment of +1. If I had a 6 and a 6, that would have added up to 12 or higher, which adds another one. So that would have brought it up too high. The bogey had a lateral at 32 and then a lateral at 40. Off the tee was a 3, off the tee was a 2. And then his third landing zone in front of the green was a full tee shot to 22, which was a 4 off of the charts. Remember, it's a shot length, so he's only hitting at 170 for those shots. And then at the green, I always use this section for my at the green number. That's the at the green, how far was that water? I'm always going to have a little slash, scratch number goes here, bogey number goes here. The information that I gave you about lateral is from the green. It's 18 yards from the center of the green to the penalty area. And approximately 65% was surrounding the green between 5 and 8 feet from the edge of the green. That should have been enough information to say, hey, that's a surround. And again, we'll talk about that more when we get to laterals, but there's also notes about the laterals. Bogey gets it. If there is a surround, bogey gets it automatically. Doesn't matter what the information is. Scratch has to have a 5 for their green target rating to get the surround. No matter what they did, it's not going to count. The big note is if I am applying a surround adjustment, let me pop that up a little higher. It is applied to the at the green number. So even though I had a 4 short of the green for the lateral landing zone, I don't apply it to the 4 for the bogey. The bogey gets it applied at the green. So they only have a 30-yard shot to the green at 18 yards away. It's still a 2, bumps it up to a 3 with the surround, but that is still less than the 4. I don't just apply the surround adjustment to the highest number. Again, more details we'll talk about later. Trees. Trees are assessed off of the tee. And then frankly, unless the trees get higher, harder, more difficult as you know, along the way, along the hole, you don't have to write trees ever again. Unless they get more difficult. Assess off of the tee, quick assessment, and then unless they get harder, you don't have to write anything. Then a quick look at psychology for this hole. Psychology considers all numbers 5 or higher. There have to be at least 3 to be considered. And then it has to start with a minimum of 20 to be counted. So for scratch, I had a 5 on the fairway. I have a 7 here at lateral, and I have a 6 at green surface. It adds to 18. I don't reach the median. No psychology is applied. Bogey only had 2 numbers, 5 or greater. Doesn't have 3, psychology is not applied. We'll talk about psych more often. So these are things, oddly enough, psychology is one of the things that we do not assess. That is sorted out by the computer. But it's kind of good to look at it and see what would happen if we overrated. If we gave the 6 here, which would give me a 12, which would mean I'd have to add 2 points. That would give me an 8. Add up 1, that gets me here somewhere. If I add up 1 someplace else, if you add up, if I overrate 1 point in 2 or 3 different areas, that also adds to psychology. So it's good to be a little bit careful about where we're noting things. I'm going to put my answer sheet up on the Pro Board when we're done today. I just wanted to kind of give everybody a chance to go through it and look at it. Does anybody have any questions about the homework review? And I think everybody's muted, so if you wanted to ask a question, you can either unmute yourself or put a question in the chat. And then I'll go back to teaching because I don't know, I lost track of an entire hour there for a minute. Everybody good with the homework? I'm going to put another homework question up by Friday for next week, and it will be more on what we're covering in the next week. I just wanted to kind of go over an overall of what that looks like. Good to go forward? No questions? Okay, well, actually good to go backwards because I'm going to go back to starting the EPLs. So we'll start talking about, oh, somebody just poked something here. Got a question.
Gretchen, this is Kate. I had put in there. Okay. Where was the error that you found in the book? You mentioned that.
Let me pop that open real quick. On the men's green target rating table, the bogey landing zone, it just happened to land right at 30 yards. It says up to or equal to 30. And then the next row down is 30 to 54. So at a column 4 green target, if I use the up to or equal to 30, it's a 2. But if I use 30 to 54, it's a 3. And that changed the R&R and the bunkers both +1. Okay. And I believe what they wanted, and I'll have to look again at, let me see. I actually had to send them a question confirming it. And I'm like, I kind of remembered something, but did I write it down? No. Could I find it in writing? Not at all. The email I got back from them, I put it in the Pro Board, and it is not right here for me to find. I believe it's going to follow the formula of the women's, where it's less than or equal to 30, and then 31 to 54 is going to be where it bumps up to 3. I have it listed in the Pro Board. Take that information more than what's in my brain, because my brain's kind of mush right now. Okay. Good question.
I have one other question. When I didn't pull my PDF from the Pro Board, I just pulled it from, I don't know where I pulled it, but anyway, do you also put an empty or a blank Form 1 on there?
There is one in the Pro Board form in that email.
Okay, thanks.
Or that one message. I can pull that up in a minute. Question from John Roman. You need to send me your email address, and I will make sure you get linked up with that correctly. Or I have your email address. Just to send me a reminder, because if you talk to me during something, I will not remember in a minute, because obviously I'm losing my mind. If I literally, if I could tell you what's been going on with scheduling, it's got me all thrown off right now. I will pull. How about I do that? Would it be okay if I just took a minute to pull up the Pro Board site? Pop that open real quick. I have it saved. I, oddly enough, use it all the time. Let me log in. Oh, I'm already logged in. So here's a quick look. Let me pop that over for a sec. This is basically the Pro Board site. Pro Board's just the name of the company. I'll get the logo figured out eventually. 2026 information. I will always get this plugged at the top. The course rating guide and manual links. So if you don't have the book yet, you can get the course rating manual. I would highly suggest this one, because that has all the information. If you want to download it to your computer, that's a good place to go to. The course rating guide is the one that we take on to the course. Everything is in the manual. Most of the stuff is in the guide. You will all be given the course rating guide. I can also provide you a manual if you want the printed one. Again, it's like 140 pages. Nobody's going to want to download that. Please do not share those with your friends. If you are done with it, either drop it off at the office. If you decide not to keep course rating, send it back to me. We'd appreciate it. Throw it in your recycling. Do not leave it around the pro shop at your course. The last thing I need is somebody from a pro shop thinking that they know how to rate a course because they found that guide somewhere. Let me go back to the 2026 information. Right here in this email. Come on. So here is the link to the homework. If you happen to have Microsoft Suite, this is the doc version that you can look at. The practice form for the Excel or the practice form in PDF. If you are somebody that has an iPad instead, the PDF will open on anything. So you can print it, download it, send it. If you can, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. You can open the Excel if you have the Microsoft Suite and type in it. Either way, and here's the information. Yes, so less than or equal to 30 is a 2 for both, less than or equal to 60 for Scratch. That's the green target information. So the link to the online training, click here. That's where it is. All 3 days of training. That link will bring you right to the online training. When I record this and get it linked up, I will add here to everybody who has access. So everybody will have access. The same with the next two. And if anybody is interested in the on-course training, it will be not Monday. Sorry, it's going to be Tuesday. Tuesday. I'm going to have to clarify that. I believe it's supposed to be Tuesday, the 24th, the day before. I want to clarify that. I will update it in here once it's clarified. It's definitely more for newbies. We're going to walk a couple of holes, show you the 4 months, show you the equipment. But they're also going to be aerifying the course at OGA Golf Course. So we're going to be limited to what we can see on that day. Anyways, this is your form. This is your pro board and what it looks like. I don't want to go into the volunteer sign up page right now because that is its own mess. Like I said, they told me, oh, just go ahead and clone your events from last year and bring them forward. However, cloning the events also had an expiration date, which I can't change, which is why nothing is showing. And I have to go in because there's no way to fix that and delete everything I added and re-add them. So I'm not stressed at all. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. It's been a year this year already. But we're going to get it done. You'll also eventually have a listing. I'm going to have that PDF of the course rating and the dates on there as soon as I get it done. I have a couple of tweaks to make. Okay, I think we're all good. Everybody good to go forward? We're going to go back to EPLs. So effective playing length corrections. It starts with roll. How much does an individual shot length, how much an individual shot length change due to uphill or downhill shots? Dogleg or forced layup, shots that must be hit with a lesser club to avoid playing through a bend in the fairway or into extreme obstacle will lengthen the effective playing length of the hole. If a golfer can cut the corner, the shot may shorten the EPL. So cutting the corner can be hitting over a pond that is dog-legged. So forced layup will always be a plus, adding a difficulty. Dogleg can be a plus or a minus because it will add to difficulty or subtract difficulty. Elevation is the individual tee to green elevation. And that's changed. So if I have a hole that the tee and the green are equal, but it goes downhill and uphill, that doesn't matter for this situation. We might have to change approach shots. That's a different area. Wind is the yardage that will be adjusted for average wind speed. It's typical on coast or gorge courses. And altitude, shot lengths that are adjusted to account for elevation over 2,000 feet. I get to Central Oregon, scratch a bogey hill a little bit further. For men, scratch lady hits a little bit further, bogey lady not so much. We'll talk about that in a little minute here. Get somebody waiting again, apparently. Nope, thought I had somebody waiting. Effective playing length corrections. Excuse me. That is, I love it. I'm doing too many things at once here. It's driving me batty. Roll. Roll is the adjustment that is evaluated on full tee shots from the chart and any subsequent full shots that are only in the adjustments for both scratch and bogey player. Factors that affect roll include fairway slope or tilt. Downhill landing zones roll further, uphill landing zones roll less. It could be fairway firmness. Soft fairways have less roll, firm fairways have more roll. Landing zones that are not cut to fairway height, but are less than extreme rough could add roll as well. That happens a lot to bogey male, bogey female from some of the forward tees and some courses that have a little bit of rough, but not a lot of rough. They may only be used, roll may only be used on a par 4 or 5 hole, or on a par 3 where the bogey cannot reach the green. You're never going to have roll for a scratch golfer who can reach a par 3. Scratch a bogey's full tee shot or subsequent tee shot on average firmness should roll approximately 15 to 25 yards. We call it 20, up to 50, it's a few yards shorter to 50 and a few yards longer to 25, average 20. Once you get beyond that, rolling less than 15, more than 25, that's where the tee shot roll rating table comes in. Reminder, it says tee shot, you can only use this chart on your tee shot. The table includes the yardage recommendations. If I'm losing 20 or more, if I'm gaining 20 more yards going downhill, it's a -4. Big reminder. If I am getting closer to the yardage, even though it's a plus yardage, it's still a minus on the adjustment on your obstacle rating. Minuses means something is getting easier. Pluses means something is getting harder. If I'm hitting uphill and I'm losing 5 yards, it's a +1, even though you're losing yardage. If that helps, harder means plus, easier means minus, just for the chart numbers and the adjustments. So as the roll adjustments are added, these are added in order, always add in order. Firmness. If a soft fairway conditions result in excessive loss of roll on a tee shot, or so I'm uphill and it's a soft fairway, I can add the uphill loss plus a fairway loss. And that says tee shot landing zone, or if a tee shot landing zone is not cut to fairway height. I can have a minus of firm fairway conditions if excessive roll, if you can get even more roll than is on the chart. The 2 adjustment happens subsequent to full shot. Sorry, I can't talk today. Stop, rewind. The 2 adjustment happens if a subsequent full shot results in less roll than the assumed 15 to 25. So plus, it doesn't matter whether you're losing 5 yards or 50 yards, it's only a +1 if it's not the tee shot. In addition, downhill shots, it can only be a -1 if it's not the tee shot, whether it's losing, again, 5 to 50 yards. And even though it's called a 2 adjustment, it means it's on your second or longer shot. It's not about the fairway on that adjustment. I have too many things clicking here. There we go. You see that asterisk? That asterisk is very important. Anytime you see the asterisk next to an adjustment, it denotes that it is shot specific, which means it must be applied at the right place and it may be used more than once. So how is it written in the Form 1? In a quick situation, if a scratch player loses 10 yards hitting an uphill drive, and the bogey player loses 20 yards on their second shot, not their drive, their second shot, how would you write that in the Form 1? Is it A, a 1 for scratch and a 2 for bogey? Is it B, a 2 for scratch and a 2 for bogey? Or is it C, a 2 for scratch and a 1 for bogey? I don't need answers. I want you to think about that. Should have you all write down what you think it is and then show me after, but it's too late for that one. I'm going to have to add an actual poll to this one of these days. Everybody get an idea of what that is? All right, I'm going to bump on. Here we go. Don't forget, when you have a roll, you must change the landing zones in green target. So there you go. It should be listed as 2. You're losing 10 yards, so you're losing plus 10 yards. Notice I didn't write the plus in here. I don't need to. Everything is assumed as a plus unless it has a minus. It is a 2 for the scratch because they lose 2 yards off of 10 yards off of the tee. It is only a 1 for bogey because it is the 2 adjustment because it happened on their second shot. Now, reminder, when you change the yardage, you have to remember to change your fairway landing zones. They went from 165 to 175, which also changed their green target. And the bogey hit fine on their drive, 215, but lost 20 yards and went back to 65 for his approach shot. Reminder, if you change this number because of roll, that means I need to have a roll number off of the charts or adjustments. What I don't like to see is numbers here, numbers up where the roll is, but no change in fairway and green target, or change in fairway and green target and no change on roll or anything. I've got to know why those numbers are changed. Quick example, Oregon Golf Club. Has anybody played there? Everybody who's played there, like I should have you all raise your hand on that one. The very first hole at Oregon Golf Club, the women play a tee at 429 holes. It is a par 5, and there's a 110-foot elevation from the tee at the bottom of the hill to the green. And this is the most forward tee. In this situation, bogey on the first shot is going to lose about 30 yards, only hitting 120. She's going to lose 20 yards on her subsequent shot, and again, 20 yards on her next. So she's going to lose 30, 20, 20 yards. She should be 19 yards off the green in 3 versus she's hitting her 4th yard to the green. Her approach shot is now adjusted to approximately 90 yards from 19. 70 yards added because of roll. And now she has to hit 90 yards over an 8-foot deep bunker in front with an approach shot that is plus about 15 feet in elevation. I don't have that number exactly with me. And the green surface is invisible because you can't see over the bunker to the surface. There's a high possibility that the bogey would at this point, by choice, hit another little layup. That would be a layup by choice, not force, to in front of the green. We'll talk about layups in a second here. What do you think her roll number would be, losing 30 yards, 20 yards, 20 yards, 30 yards, 20 yards, 20 yards, so over almost 70 yards? What do you think the roll table totally would be, off the table and adjustments? Using this example, going pretty quickly through it, Oh, bugger. I have the tee shot, losing 30 yards is a 4 right off the tee shot. The second shot, losing 20 yards, is only a 1 point. The third shot is a 1 point, so her final roll number would be a +6. Everybody understand kind of where I got that? Any questions? It's a lot going on. And that's assuming you have the book in front of you, which hopefully everybody will have next week or soon. Okay, moving on quick. Dog leg or forced layup. The length correction is required if the effective length of a hole is different from measured length because of a dog leg or forced layup. A forced layup is a plus adjustment, making the hole play longer. A dog leg may be a plus, longer hole, or a minus, shorter hole due to cutting a corner. Layup by choice does not have an EPL adjustment, but will have adjustments elsewhere and does require adjusting a short shot length. We don't do layups by choice very often. And as a matter of fact, per course rating, it should be incredibly rare. But if you did have a layup by choice, even though there's no EPL, if I laid up by choice 20 yards, 30 yards, if it was forced, I'd have a 30 up in the layup column. What I want you to write is CH for choice if that were a choice layup. That gives me a notification of why that was adjusted. For dogleg adjustments, a dogleg minus adjustment. For instance, a hole that curves around a pond where the player can hit over the pond to shorten the length of the hole, I'm going to show a minus. -50 if the scratch player saves 50 yards by hitting over a pond, -30 for the bogey in this example. A dogleg plus example is a hole that curves in it but is lined with trees. Pond I can go over. Trees, unless they're short trees, our holes and our trees in Oregon, there's not a lot of going over except for a few trees here and there. If a scratch golfer had to lay up 30 yards because of trees at a corner where you couldn't play a full shot, that's how you list it, 30 yards in dogleg. Here's an example. Salishan number 7 from the silver tees at 386. The scratch man's rating, so this is the scratch man. Remember that the player hits a straight shot to the center of the fairway with a reasonable shot width to account for accuracy. A 250-yard shot puts a player through the fairway and into the trees on the other side. The safe landing zone is back here at about 220 yards. That saves them from going through the fairway. It keeps them in the fairway. You don't want to go all the way to the edge. You always want to stay just off the edge, just beyond the edge, 10 yards past, 10 yards short at a minimum. But then that adjusts his shot length. So that's where that +30 would be listed, or just 30 because plus is assumed. That layup of 30 yards is where that's at. Dogleg minus example. This course is just a random course. It's nothing that we have in existence in Oregon. On a 400-yard hole, the scratch male, the course is measured as per the yellow line. But when the scratch player hits on the red line, he plays to approximately there. He's got only 150 yards to play to that green. 150 yards playing the yellow measured line. But if he plays directly to the green, he can play that in 130 yard. The dogleg adjustment for that person would be -20, and his approach shot would change from 150 to 130. He's saving 20 yards by hitting that direction. Course layup example, Salem Golf Course. It's 331 yards from the red tees. Bogey woman, she hits a full 150-yard shot. Her second shot would land her right in the pond. She'd have to lay up 20 yards to get to the fairway landing zone. My lines are not the prettiest lines, but that gives you a good idea. Her normal safe layup, instead of hitting 130 yards, she hits 110 yards. Her layup adjustment is 20 yards. And then her approach shot to the green is adjusted to 71 from the original 51, which would need her having scuba gear in order to play that shot. So remember, if you have to lay up, if you have a dog leg, if you're adjusting the shot length, you have to adjust the landing zone. You have to give the adjustment. You have to put the number in the EPL up above, and you have to update the approach shot. Notes about elevation for tee to green, not the approach shot elevation. So this is the information you do not need to put. Basically, it comes down to uphill holes play longer than level holes, downhill holes play shorter. For tee to green, there's no need for the course rating team to enter this ever. It's a waste of your time. And if you're spending more time on the course, we're all spending more time on the course. You don't need to write that on par 4 or par 5 holes. It's already recorded. You will need that for par 3 holes because it's necessary for topography. That's it. You'll need elevation on for approach shot holes, but that's not the elevation tee to green. That's the approach shot elevation. That comes someplace else. Most of the adjustments are made for roll and topography, so we don't worry. The elevation doesn't factor into what we do. The loopholed lasers that OGA does have elevation. It's not exact and it's in yards, so you do have to multiply by 3. I think most of my people can handle multiplying by 3 to get from yards to feet. There are many free apps that you can put on your phone or your watch. Just watch your battery, because a lot of the elevation apps will run constantly. And then you need to remember, if you're doing elevation using your phone or a watch or something, you have to measure at the landing zone and then at the green. If you only measure one or the other, you're not going to have a complete picture. Must be at least 10 feet to record feet of elevation, yards for distance, feet for elevation, for instance. And then after 10 feet, you want to use averages. 25 feet uphill should be recorded as plus 30. 15 feet downhill should be recorded as minus 20. On par 3 holes, the maximum elevation is plus or minus 40 feet. And again, most of the elevation calculation is done in the background. The only time we need it is on par 3s, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. This is Mountain View Golf Course, the 15th hole. It's 60 yards from tee to green. Notice the 60 yards isn't written here. You don't need to worry about that. The approach shot for the bogey has a 20-foot plus elevation. The approach shot for the bogey on the white tee has 20-foot plus elevation. That is where you need elevation, is from the approach shot. That's the only place you're going to record elevation, is on approach shot, unless it's par 3. Let me show you what that looks like in the course rating system. For the hole before, anybody who knows Mountain View, I'm going to go back up 1. Mountain View is 100 feet from the back tees and over. I think it's even over. I can't write a minus 100 on a par 3. I can only write a minus 40, no matter what. But when we talk about the elevation or the topography, you're going to use the topography chart that you need. So even though this is 140 feet downhill on 12, I can only write 40. But on 15, it is a plus 60, and I can write plus 60 because it's a par 5. Those little weird things. So just a reminder, if I happen to have a par 3 that's 60 feet down, 60 feet up, I can only write 40, no matter what. You can write the total. I can only put 40 in the system. Wind is our next EPL. That's the length correction for wind. It's based on the average daytime wind speed in season. I have sites that I can access this. Again, you as a course rater are not going to adjust this. I have to look at and find the average wind speed between March and in November In certain months, at the nearest location, it's fun to find. It is, but we don't adjust our landing zones or approach shot lengths for wind, because you can have uphill wind, downhill wind, side hill wind. We don't make that adjustment in shot lengths for wind. It is recorded in the course rating program. It is used primarily on coastal courses along the gorge, and there are a few other courses that are wide open in Central Oregon that might have wind adjustments. Most of them don't have a high enough wind to make that adjustment. That's adjusted per 9, because you might have a front 9 and back 9 where one is along a coast and one goes more into the trees. So we can adjust it per 9. It is not done per hole. It is assessed using local historical data. And this is an in-office process. It's not done by raters, although you might want to make a note. Hey, everybody said it's real windy here. I might have to take an extra look at it. It might be really calm the day that we rate, and I might not think about it, but most of the time, wind is already recorded. This is what that looks like. So average wind speed in miles per hour. The adjustment per 9 is as listed here. And it's adjusted, again, front 9 or back 9. It's not individual, it's not hole by hole. And it's an overall assessment for the course, not individual by T or gender either. Altitude is the final EPL, effective playing length factor. Courses that are 2,000 feet or more above sea level. Oh, I have the wrong sea level there. Let me remember to fix that one. Sea level. Good job, Gretch. Gee, I wish I could tell you how many times I've edited this thing and didn't notice that. Courses 2,000 feet or more up to, sorry, above 2,000 feet, 2,000 feet or more above sea level, players gain shot length. Most of the courses, I-5 corridor, do not have any altitude adjustments. And then after 2,000 feet, every 500 feet, there's a slight adjustment in yardages. The corrections are only made for par 4 and par 5 holes. The shot lengths are already calculated in the Form 1s. Scratch and male bogey are affected. Scratch female is affected. The bogey female doesn't hit her ball in the air high enough to get additional yardage. I'll show you what that looks like when we get to the system. Quick examples: Tualatin Country Club is less than 2,000 feet. Scratch male and female hit 250, 210. Bogey male, female hit 200, 150 off the tee. And it affects tee shots and secondary shots. I'll show you that in the table. Bend Golf Club is between 35 and 4,000 feet, 3,500 and 4,000 feet. The scratch male and female hit 262 and 220. So scratch is hitting an extra 12 yards for male, an extra 10 yards for female. The bogey male hits it about 210, so he's getting an extra 10 yards. I didn't list the bogey lady because she doesn't get any extra. Sylvie's Valley Ranch is the highest golf course. It's between 4,600 and 4,800 feet of elevation. Scratch male hits it 266, female hits it 223, and the bogey male hits it about 213. Again, bogey lady hits at 150 off the tee. There's a quick chart. There's a lot of numbers going on here. So you'll see the higher you get, the more yardage you're going to get in elevation. So those courses around Denver are getting a lot of extra yardage. There's just flat, less air up there. Hopefully they're giving you oxygen when you're playing golf when you get going on there. But there's your chart. If you're ever curious, see the scratch males information. You see the bogey males player information. You see the scratch females information. What you don't see is bogey, because bogey doesn't change. Does anybody have any questions about effective playing length corrections? I'll give a second here for any questions. Again, all of the chart numbers are going to be in your books. You'll have examples for just about everything. If you can think of an example for anything we've discussed on a specific hole, feel free to give me a question. Give it a couple more seconds and then I'm going to go back to the main presentation. I think we can get a couple of obstacles in before we finish for the day. I've got 17 more minutes before the church bells start ringing again, and hopefully we can't hear them still. Okay, we're going to go back to the rest of the presentation. We're going to see how far we can get. I think we can get through topography and maybe fairways before we go. Already talked about homework. So now we get into the obstacles. This is the information that we assess at every landing zone for scratch, for bogey, for male, for female, from each set of tees. It's a lot of information. So our first, I'm going to go through them really quickly, and then I'm going to go through each one individually with all of its information. So it starts with topography. That's the impact of terrain on stance, lie, and the player's ability to hit a ball. The fairway is the evaluation of the difficulty of landing and keeping a ball in the fairway. Green target is the probability of hitting and holding a green based on length of shot, size and shape of the green. Recoverability and rough, we frequently call R&R. If a player misses the landing zone, whether it's fairway or green, how difficult is it to recover? Bunkers, the effect of bunkers are based upon the effect that bunkers have based upon their proximity to target areas, fairway or surrounding green. Crossing is the distance to safely carry a penalty area, extreme rough or OB. Lateral is the lateral distance to penalty area, extreme rough or OB. Trees is the overall impact of trees on the play of a hole. Green surface is the stimp meter speed and contour and slope of the green. Psychological is the cumulative effect of multiple obstacles. So there's some quick definitions. We're going to start by going over topography. I say, just start at the beginning. We'll get it done. So topography, it's the evaluation of the impact of terrain on play. It includes slopes and mounds in the fairway landing zone that affect stance or lie. Mounds that are in the rough are rated under recoverability and rough. The approach shot uphill or downhill, if it is at least 10 feet, is also considered. Again, on the approach shot. The approach shot is the shot to the green. And we're going to rate each individual landing zone and then look at the entire landing zone, not just the end. Remember, your ball's going to land and roll out 20 yards, give or take. You don't want to just look at that end landing zone. You want to look at the entire rectangle that is involved in where that topography happens. You want to consider the nature of each shot being played. For example, an uphill shot to an elevated green is easier to play than a downhill shot to that same elevated green. There's levels of difficulty that you want to look at with the nature of the shot being played. We have this updated, the topography chart was updated a couple of years ago, but just reminding people that every once in a while you still think of it the old way. This is the way it is. So that minor to moderate column was added. It used to be what we called a tweener row. There was a minor row. There was a column, rather. There was a minor column. There was a moderate column. And then we were always in this middle one because it was kind of in between. They finally added a column so we don't have to think about it. And then specific information was added for approach shot elevation. For example, plus 10 if it's between 10 and 14, plus 30 if it's between 24 and 35. So looking really quickly, minor to moderate, that's that tweener row I was talking about. It was a tweener column, tweener column. We used to have to assess this thinking, it was between a 5 and a 7, and we're in this row column more than just about anything else in the book. And then the actual elevation. Again, your approach shot is the shot to the green. If the shot to the green is plus or minus 10 feet, you have to edit that information up. On a par 3 or a one-shot hole, you want to rate only, use elevation only if, you're only going to rate topography if there is an elevation difference of at least 10 feet. You're not worried about stance and lie. You're hitting off of a tee box, which should be flat. And even if it's scooped up and pockmarked, you still get to tee up your ball. You have control over the condition of how your ball sits. But if bogey can't reach the green in one shot, you want to rate it as a two-shot hole. So again, par 3, this is all you're going to consider is a par 3 hole is a 0 unless it's at least 10 feet of elevation difference. If it's a par 3 that the bogey can't reach, then you skip over and start at the 2 or more shot hole, because it's still a par 3, but it's 2 or more shot hole. For two-shot holes, notice neither one of these say par still. You want to rate separately for scratch and bogey. It's based on the stance and lie plus elevation to the green. On 3 or more shot holes, rate again separately for scratch and bogey from each landing zone. Stance and lie plus elevation only for the approach shot at the green. And when you have more than one or multiple 3-shot holes, 2-shot holes, or 2-shot or 3-shot holes, you only want to take the highest rating number for the final topography number. That's why when I did the homework, I only needed to look at the 2 highest bits of information. Well, we only had ones. Sorry, that was fairway I was thinking of. You only have to look at the most difficult, not because there's, anyways, look at the most difficult. Here's some quick examples for minor to moderate. Come on. This area is minor. There's no elevation, there's no contouring, there's nothing going on there at all. That's a minor. This area is more minor to moderate. Again, you want to think about the entire landing zone. If I were only looking at this one little area here, I might bump it up to a 3, but if I look at this whole area, it should be probably a 2, minor to moderate. You don't have a lot of good examples of pictures. I need to get better examples of pictures of better, interesting topography. This is a good example of a moderate topography. Lots of swales, lots of uphill, downhill. This may only almost be too significant, just a little bit higher for significant. Again, I need to find some better references, but think about these shot lengths. If I'm having to adjust my grip, my stance, if I'm having to bend over, twist, turn, that's when I start getting into significant and extreme on topography. That one's a pretty quick one. Topography is fairly simple, even though we use it on every stance, every lie. Does anybody have any questions about topography? Oops. Again, if you have any specific holes, specific courses to talk about, we can do that offline. No questions about topo? Gonna keep going forward. I'm gonna move on and we're gonna go to the next spot, which is fairway. Come on, if it opens, eventually. There we go. Fairway is the evaluation of the difficulty of keeping the ball in the fairway from tee to green. It's based on fairway width in all landing zones and the length of the hole. You want to look at nearby trees, obstacles, and punitive rough. The minimum fairway number is 1. If the bogey can't reach the green on a par 3, there is never, absolutely not a fairway number. However, that fairway is assessed in the 3 adjustment in R&R. You also want to look at all the other things. You want to look at topography and bunkers and everything else, but they don't get a fairway number off the fairway chart. Minimum fairway value is 1. Men, you're going to enter from the right. Women, you're going to enter from the left. Very quick examples. You want to look at the length of the hole and then the width of the fairway. So a quick example on a hole that's 475 yards long. and 26 yards wide, that would be a 5 right off the chart. For women, playing a 290-yard hole that's to 32 yards wide, that would be a 3 right off the chart. An example using that tweener is if I had a female having a hole, it's 340 yards long, it's 25 yards wide. That's right on the cusp there. If it's 24, it's a 6. If it's 25, it's a 4, rather, right off the chart. If I'm right on that edge, we should probably use a tweener. We can go 1 yard either way, even maybe 2 yards in either way, and use that tweener and be perfectly fine. That goes for 1 row up and row 1 down, 1 row down, because it jumps from 3 to 5, 4 to 6, and 5 to 7. Feel free to use those tweeners when you see that information. Reminder, a tweener is a value that falls between two table values. If a table shows 4 in one column and 6 in the next, they choose a 5 and to not over or under rate. Note that if a fairway is less than 20 yards wide, the width adjustment cannot be applied. So that 0 to 19, you can't make a width plus adjustment. If it's getting that bad, you're probably talking about a layup. Quick fairway example on a hole that's rated for men 500-yard long hole. The drives for both the scratch and bogey were 45 and 42 yards wide. The second shot for scratch was 26 yards wide, and basically, I think that would be, yeah, so the second yard shot for scratch is 26. The second yard for bogey is 32 yards wide. At that point, when you're looking at fairways, I don't even have to look at the 45 and 42. I know that the scratch and bogey, the two short yardages are going to run that numbers. It's going to be a 5 and a 4. I don't even have to look at the 42 and 45. Unless there's something with an adjustment in the fairway rating that's going to make those wider fairways rate higher than the narrower fairways, I don't even have to look at them. I do have to write the information down, however. So just pulling straight off the chart, 500-yard long hole, 26 yards wide for scratch, pulls a 5 off the charts. For bogey, the 32-yard wide at 500 yards is a 4 off the chart. Again, it's the length of the hole, which can change from tee to tee. Sometimes you're going to be in the third row, and then your next tee might be in the second row. You might be using all three or four columns, depending on how far apart those tees are. Again, the final chart numbers reflect the more difficult landing zone. The quick fairway adjustments, always, no matter what you're looking at, always apply the adjustments in the order that they are listed. First example, layups. If the player has to lay up, whether it's forced or by choice, or if they hit less than a full shot, due to a dog leg, they get a layup adjustment at that specific landing zone. It's not off of the final chart number, it's at that landing zone. Visibility. If none of the landing zone is visible and it's difficult to determine the line of play, there's a visibility adjustment. There is not a single landing zone in Oregon that I know of that is not visible and you can't determine the line of play. We have these crazy things in Oregon called trees, and they outline the holes on almost every hole that you can tell the direction you're supposed to be playing in. A lot of the desert courses where that comes into play. Visibility at the green is another story. Unpleasant. If unpleasant lies are caused by poor turf conditions, you can add the U adjustment to the individual landing zones. You do not want to use that if the course plays preferred lies during mid-season. If they're being able to tee it up and clean off their ball, don't worry about it because they're in control of their top or their fairway conditions. All fairway adjustments are listed with the asterisk. Reminder, you can apply multiple times and you must apply them at the landing zone that you're adjusting. Shot specific. So it must be added to the appropriate landing zone. For example, if there was an unpleasant landing zone, going back to the example before, if the unpleasant landing zone was back at 250, using that example from before, if the unpleasant adjustment would have been applied here at 250, it doesn't get added to the 5 that's in the final chart. That U would have been added to 45, which is probably a 1 or 2 off the chart. I'm not even going to look at it now because I know it's going to be less than a 5. So you don't just automatically add that to the total. You only add it specifically to that landing zone. Some further adjustment. A width minus adjustment. Remember, minuses are better. If I have a hillside that is going to increase the playability, or the hillsides are mounding closely bordering fairway that balls will bounce into the fairway, it effectively makes the fairway play wider. So you have a width minus. Minuses mean easier. Another width minus adjustment, if there's a narrow landing zone width causing a high table value where shots can be easily played from the rough on one side of the fairway, it's a -1. If it's a -2, if there are narrow landing zones on both sides of the fairway. If I have a really low cut rough height, just less than 2 inches and a very narrow fairway, I can go -1 on one, -2 on both. How about we finish fairways and I'll let you guys go for the day. I can hear the church bells ringing. A couple of width plus adjustments. If it's a dog leg, an overhanging tree branches in the landing zone, contour or tilt that a shot must be played to one side to avoid, or severe obstacles such as dense trees, penalty area, closely border a fairway landing zone, we might lose a ball or have more difficulty hitting. Width plus adjustments. I wish this showed the actual contouring of this hole. Width +2, if the fairway width is effectively reduced when a majority of the fairway landing zone is tilted so that balls are likely to end up in a rough. This is Stone Ridge Golf Course, number 4. They just reversed it a couple of years ago. It was 13. It's about 100 feet downhill from tee to green. There's a severe hillside to the left, and then the fairway is tilted all to the left side, and then the fairway is tilted to the right. But then the hole is so far downhill that you want to counter and look at balance of downhill roll yardage adjustment versus side hill roll plus the width adjustment. That's a heck of a golf hole. How to measure when a fairway landing zone is wider or narrower from beginning to end. It depends on the direction of play, where the ball lands, and then where it rolls to. You want to think of any other obstacles in the area, and you want to consider the rough height. If it's towards the green, going wide to narrow, you want to average both. Average the wide, average the narrow. It's pretty simple, unless there's an obstacle that stops you from getting there. If you're going towards the green and it's going narrow to wide, that's where it depends. Again, it's likely to be less than the other direction. So quick direction of play, if you're going wide to narrow, measure the front width at the landing zone and then at the end of the landing zone and average. So in this situation, if it was 38 in the wide and 26 in the narrow, the average would be 32. If your direction of play changes the opposite way, if you're going narrow to wide, you want to measure the width at the front of the landing zone and then assess the obstacles in the area. If it's thick or rough, you might land on the outside of the fairway and not get the roll. So assess the obstacles in the area and then look at the end of the landing zone. So it might be a 26 from the beginning, 26 yards wide. It might be the 32 we're averaging, or it might be something in between. You want to think about little things like, is there a bunker in the front of that landing zone on either side? That might stop you from rolling all the way, no matter what. So you want to be careful and look at all the things that are on the edge of those fairways to see where you're going from there. Again, if there's a bunker, mounds, tall rough at either end of the landing zone, that might change whether you count the whole or partial width. It might affect your average as well. And a big reminder to look at the entire landing zone, not just the end line. How to measure when a fairway has an intermediate cut in between fairway and rough. That's a cut mostly probably some more on the private courses or some resort courses. A lot of public courses don't bother. But an intermediate cut, you've got your fairway cut, you've got an intermediate cut, and then you have the rough. In that situation, the cut needs to be more than fairway but less than rough. And you need, if you include both sides, it can artificially decrease the rating and vice versa. So what you want to do is include one side of the intermediate cut with a fairway height and ignore the other side. So what I like to do is measure from the fairway edge of the left, but include the intermediate cut on the right. That way, the book actually tells you to add half of the width to both sides, and I think that's just crazy math. If you just measure the right on the fairway edge on the left and include the intermediate cut on the right, you'll be fine. So in this case, ignore the left, add the right. That way you don't have to worry about it too much. There we go. Any questions about fairways? I got you already about 5 minutes longer than we were supposed to go, but I think we were good going there. If anybody has any questions, let me know. I'm going to turn off the recording now. Let me turn off that recording. And I'm going to keep this on for a couple of minutes. If anybody